Didn't you love that?
Yeah.
Whatever, I'll be the last one, is fine.
I absolutely submitted my time after I ran the first report for people who didn't submit their time last payroll. Like, whoops, that was me.
Here we go.
So I actually have a cousin who absolutely watches these after the fact. He doesn't even live here. He doesn't live here anymore. He graduated from here and lives somewhere else. But he watches city council meetings and he'll message me about comments about the meetings and what
Okay.
happens.
I'll switch you.
We talked
No,
about.
Christie's remote, so I'll switch you, Christie.
I did.
There you go.
Well, it is, brother, what it
You did roll with. Look at you. I have an extension cord if you need it, sir.
Okay.
Hello, good evening.
Oh. I don't know, because there's a plug right there. It's not, but if you need to go extension, have an extension cord in the bag. You brought your own, just same color as mine.
Yeah, there you go.
I could throw, although mine
Twins.
runs in the corner over. Mine runs Christmas light in the neighbor's house.
I'm sure they appreciate you paying the electric bill too.
Well, I own the neighbor's house, so they do.
Oh, there you go.
Hi, Christy.
Leave her alone. She's sucking on her bottle there.
I did not print the packet, so we'll see what I can do. I might be doing. I'm sure. What is that? Shoes. It's a lot of pages.
Yeah. Just start up a chainsaw just to print it off.
Right? Oh.
You look at when we were doing the vouchers day,
Like, you guys can review the vouchers and sign off.
you want these? We both don't? No, we both have.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll do them in.
Okay.
And somewhere around. Hello, Mayor. Good, sir. How are you?
Mayor,
Amazing. Only amazing, but better than.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. David, how you doing tonight? Pretty good. Good. You look better than you did last night. The background isn't so blurry.
You need to. There is a.
But Scott may be able to move the pool item up on the agenda.
Yeah, I'll do that here. Oh, Scott's gonna plug in.
Find you.
How's that? You reach that one? Perhaps. Have an extension cord if you don't, if you can't.
What kind of an IT guy are you without an extension cord?
Yeah, that works. Thanks.
A very fine IT guy, thank you. Thank you very much for asking.
Since you brought it up.
He was actually working earlier today to put the laser piece
Oh, yeah.
together, but it
Oh.
was, it made staff feel better that he confirmed that, no, it doesn't work.
It wasn't staff.
It wasn't staff.
It wasn't user error. It's
Right.
always nice to see, to find that out, isn't it?
Right.
Huh? Oh, we're fine. Yeah, I'm not gonna make it next.
Good. So I got you for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, we're fine. Go, other than to refill my tea, I'm not going. And then what do I gotta. I need to make up a-
I know everybody's painful with you. Sorry. Oh, man. You're like, oh, it's almost done.
I know.
Sure.
Did
Sheriff,
see
how
that
you
there's
doing?
2 sheets?
Hi. I still want to call you under sheriff.
No, that's Tracy. That's Tracy. I talked to him yesterday too, just to check on him, see how he was doing.
Good, sounds like he's repairing well.
Yeah, he's still got a problem with his hand.
Yes.
So.
I'd like to call. Meeting at 6 o'clock. I'd like to invite you to stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have Paul.
Yeah.
No Paul. Righty. So consider our pledge of allegiance. All right, public comment. Anybody in the gallery?
If anyone wants to talk for public comment online, just go ahead and raise your hand. I can unmute you. Okay.
Anybody here? Public comment? All right. There have been some minor changes to the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Perfect. And so we're ready for our first set of guests.
Okay, let me get the presentation up. Actually, here, let me share my screen.
do you remember what page that starts in the packet? I
Should be hyperlinked. So,
Page 19.
okay, so Leslie, you should be able to talk. I don't know who's kicking this off.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, great. I also have Jennifer Paletto with me or she should be online. I can't see who's here.
Yeah, Jennifer is also unmuted as well as Kelly.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much for having us. So I'm Leslie Naramore, and I'm the Executive Director of Washington Gorge Action Programs, which is the community action agency for Klickitat and Skamania counties. And I'd like to allow Jennifer and Kelly a moment to introduce themselves as well.
And Sarah is also online.
Jennifer, do you want to go first and then you, Kelly?
Sure. So my name is Jennifer Paletto. I am the Associate Director with Washington Gorge Action Programs. Thank you for having me tonight.
I'm Kelly Horvath. I am the Director of the Office of Housing Stabilization with Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, which is kind of the sister organization to WAGAP. We serve Hood River, Sherman, and Wasco counties out of the river though. And Sarah Kellums is here as well, so I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Sarah Kellums. I'm the Development and Engagement Coordinator, also with Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. Thank you.
All right, so thank you again for having us. I'm sorry that we're not there in person. We have people presenting who are from all over the gorge, and it would have been quite a drive for some folks. So we decided to just go ahead and do it online. So this is a project that has been in the makings for about a year now, and we are a collaboration of many agencies, but the most exciting thing is that it's a multi-state agency. So this is the first time that we've ever looked at houselessness in our region as a region and not divided it by state lines.
All right, and if you can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Thank you. So a little bit of the background, Leslie gave an update. This is the first of its kind that we're aware of that is on both sides of the river. And the reason that we all came together is really understanding some of the things that you all will be very familiar with in your county as well, in the city limits, is that there's rising rates of housing insecurity in our region. Housing supply has lagged while demand in the area has grown. Lots of investors have bought up more single family homes. Rents have skyrocketed. Houselessness has become more complex. There's a lot of different needs that we want to make sure we wrap around our community that has, maybe behavioral health challenges, mental health challenges, and making sure that they are going to be successful in housing long-term to the best of our ability. We also want to recognize that a lot of the community members who are unhoused or have lacking housing resources are traditionally underserved communities. So our communities of color, those who have chronic illness or have a disability, those individuals who are low income. And so we all came together to really recognize that this is where we are, and we want to move forward to really address some of these really difficult and challenging problems in a way that is very collaborative. And I'll let Kelly talk more about that.
Yes, so next slide, we have an overview of just some of the partners, this slide as well as the next one. You can see that we have about 40 different organizations, local governments, different entities, including people with lived experience with houselessness who were involved throughout the first part of 2022 and all the way into this fall with the process of developing both the Houseless Collaborative itself and then our 5-year strategic plan. We're really excited about the amazing partnership that has gone into developing this plan, and more excited to be diving into the implementation side with these partners, because all of these partners helped inform the goals and priorities that we'll be highlighting to you all tonight that are in that strategic plan. And every partner has an important piece of the puzzle to contribute when it comes to the implementation side. So our goal is that we continue to engage a wide network of partners, at least these 40 entities, if not more, as we move forward on the implementation side over the next 5 years. Next one, there you go.
The vision of the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative is that we envision a region with equitable opportunities and support where everyone who needs stable housing can find and afford it, especially communities who have faced disproportionate barriers to housing, so that everyone can achieve the best quality of life possible. Through collaboration and advocacy, we work to reduce houselessness in the Gorge by expanding housing capacity and ensuring supportive services are provided in culturally affirming ways that uphold human dignity. So the bottom line is that we believe that everyone deserves to have a safe place to live, and we believe that everyone deserves the dignity that comes with having a safe place to live. Next slide, please. So these were our values, and I'm not going to read these out loud. When we all came to the table, we knew that these, as a group, we decided that these were the things that we wanted to focus on. So compassion and our shared humanity are at the core of our work. We also value collaboration and partnership. As Kelly mentioned, we had about 40 partners who came together to work on this plan. We value advocacy, and we elevate diversity, equity, and lived experience. And the lived experience piece is really important to us. When we came together to work on this plan, we had people at the table who either were currently or had experienced homelessness, because we know that they are the people who can really get at the core of the work that we need to be doing. They are the people who know how, and they have that voice to get themselves out of the experience of houselessness. We also value tenacity and perseverance, which when we were working with our members in our community who were houseless, that is something that we saw again and again, that they came to the table, they worked with us, and they just really wanted to make a difference and make sure that other people didn't have to go through the same experience that they were having. Next slide, please.
Leslie mentioned equity. Again, I will not read this entire slide, but I will just emphasize that as the members of the collaborative were kind of laying out the founding, mission, vision, and values, it also was really important to them to write an equity statement to help kind of serve as our North Star for how we incorporate our equity values into our work. So you can see here what that equity statement includes. And I'll just highlight that it is action oriented. And we really do believe as a collaborative that we don't just want to talk about these values, but we actually want to walk that walk. So we are going to do that and are already doing that in our collaborative work by finding and addressing root causes of inequity, working to improve overall housing systems and institutions where personal identities often predict inequitable outcomes. And we really care about using data to drive decisions and to focus resources so that equity is not just a concept, but a practice. And then last but not least, we agreed as a collaborative that it is really important to include the voices of people who are or have been houseless, with a focus on including communities of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color in the collaborative's work. And also we're happy to involve a lot of our culturally specific and responsive service providers in the strategic planning process over the last year as well. Slide, please.
So our 4 goal areas were shelter. We know that we need to increase the amount of shelter beds that are available in our region, but we also know that having shelter is just a Band-Aid. It's not a long-term solution. So we also want to make sure that we are increasing our services so that we have a one-stop shop, so that when someone comes to us who is houseless and they need certain things, we are the ones who are able to provide those services instead of having to send them all over the region. On our housing, we know that we have to increase the housing stock. If we're going to be able to move people out of shelter, we have to have houses that they can go live in, and we don't currently have that. And then the last piece was advocacy, and that's why we're here today. We are on a road show all over our 5-county region. We've been to several cities and county commissioners already, and we just want to make sure that everyone knows how to advocate, because it's something that we can all do if we know how. And the last thing with our strategic plan is just that when we were working on it and putting it together, we wanted to be really strategic in the things that we included, because we want this to be something that we can actually accomplish. This is a plan that for the next 5 years is going to be a living document. It's not something that's going to go on a shelf. It's something that we're all going to be consistently working on. Next slide, please.
So our first goal, Leslie talked a little bit about it as a bigger picture, but is really the shelter. So the basis for that stopgap resource for folks who have no other option in the moment. So we want to make sure as part of our strategic plan that there's enough funding in the region to make sure that shelter is a priority in this short term so that we can work on some of those long-term priorities. As WAGAP and as MCAC, we have both been seeking and already have increased our abilities with funding to be able to meet some of those needs. We recognize that collaboration in the way that we get the messaging out about what shelters are open and when is also really important. And so that is something that has already been in process over the last year or so with collaborating and coordinating our messages when we're having cooling shelters open, when warming shelters are open across the river, so that folks who may be in the Dalles know that if they happen to be in Stevenson, what things are available and when. We also want to make sure that we are kind of a one-stop shop, that if someone walks into any of the doors of our offices in Skamania, Klickitat, Hood River, Wasco, or Sherman County, that they're getting the same information and they're not being told that they have to go to another place for another service and somewhere else for something else. We want to create a low barrier for access for folks as best we can. And so those are some of the key priorities that we're really focusing on and will continue to focus on in our goal area 1, which is shelter. Our second goal area is really to focus on our services. We want to improve our access to resources for the houseless people, identifying what they need and how it would be best provided to them, valuing their culture, their identity, their specific needs that might come into the picture that might have created a barrier for them in the past. We want to be able to work around those things. So sometimes that means, collaborating with a landlord to identify, this is a challenge for this individual, and this is how our agency is going to support that by providing services so that this individual is going to have a more successful and stable time in this housing. We know that we need to add more services in our area that help with specifically behavioral health care, transitioning folks in and out of jail or mental health facilities. And we need to be able to better provide those wraparound services in those life changes. So that's one of our key priority areas. Some of the things that have already happened in that way is WAGAP specifically has sought funding and been approved for funding to be able to provide some of the supports that folks might need when they're leaving a behavioral health care facility or leaving incarceration, to be able to have stable housing so that they don't have that gap in time where they might be couch surfing or living in their vehicle. So some of those are the ways that we want to make sure that we help our community in the way that is best for them, but also that we want to make sure that we're coordinating well with other agencies so that we're coordinating locally, but also regionally. So across the river, people don't recognize that Oregon and Washington are different places with different services all the time. So we want to make sure that, if someone's coming to our Stevenson office to get services, but maybe traveling to Hood River for their medical care, those are some of the things that we want to just make sure that we're doing our best to coordinate.
Then our third goal area is housing. And we know that our actual infrastructure and the number of affordable, accessible units that we have available is a core piece of the solution to houselessness and the work that we have to do to address this issue in our communities. So we have outlined in the collaborative strategic plan an actual concrete goal of a number of units that we would like to support to get across the finish line when it comes to projects that are in the pipeline for construction right now, but not necessarily a done deal yet. So you can see here that that goal is 262 affordable, accessible housing units in the 5-county Mid-Columbia region by 2027. We also have agreed as a collaborative that it is really important to preserve the region's existing supply of affordable housing. So our strategic plan includes several actions and tactics that are focused on that goal, whether it is helping coordinate and advocate to extend expiring subsidies that help keep some current affordable housing complexes affordable, or looking at other opportunities to, help folks who live in mobile home parks to end up being able to purchase the land that those mobile homes are on to keep it affordable long term. One of the goals actually is to compile a little bit of a report to outline the main preservation opportunities across the region in the next 5 years. So we're going to be doing that soon as part of our strategic plan implementation work. Additionally, we know that we can build as much housing as we want, but if we're not intentional about thinking through how to engage culturally specific and culturally responsive service partners and traditionally underserved communities in actually accessing that housing, then we aren't going to move the needle on our equity goals and values that the collaborative really cares about and that we know are important given the historic kind of disproportionate barriers that are facing the houseless community and particularly houseless communities of color. And finally, our last kind of big goal area within the housing piece of this strategic plan is to help community leaders as well as the public understand the need for more affordable and accessible housing. So we really do aim to make sure that we're at the table and sharing the perspective of both the advocates as well as the people who would benefit directly from construction of housing, even though we know that a lot of times the loudest voices in those conversations can be from folks who are opposed to more affordable housing in our communities. Next slide.
So our last goal area is advocacy. And like Kelly just said, that's so important, making sure that our community leaders understand the need for more housing and understand the problems and the dilemmas that our houseless neighbors face. So we want to make sure that when we're asking people to advocate for something, that they understand what it is that they're advocating for, and they understand why it's so important. Because whether we realize it or not, the issue of houselessness and affordable housing affects everyone in our community. It's really difficult to think about, and a lot of times you don't want to think about these things, but they are affecting people. They're affecting, kids that your kids might go to school with. They're affecting the people who work in all of our service industries around here. And all of the, the people who work to make this such a great and desirable location. So a lot of the people who work, in our local restaurants, or even some of our teachers or our people who work in healthcare can't afford to live in these communities. And so that's a real problem. And so we want to make sure that people understand that as they go out and do the advocacy. I believe it was in the last year, hosted some advocacy roundtables to try to teach people how to advocate for more affordable housing, because we know that oftentimes you only hear from the people who don't want something. And so we want to make sure that you can hear from the people who are for something as well. We want to make sure that we're using data, because it's, we do have houseless people in our region. And, in Stevenson or in the Bingen White Salmon area, we don't often see them out on the streets as much as we might in a place like Portland, but they are there. It just looks a little bit different in our community. We often have people who are living in their vehicles, or they're couch surfing, or they're in unsafe living situations because they don't have anywhere else to go. And so we want to make sure that people understand what houselessness looks like in our community. And then finally, we want to be able to advocate for funding and policies that are going to help us make real progress on these issues. So we want to make sure that if something is moving through legislation that could potentially be a real help towards solving this issue in our communities, we want to make sure that people know how to advocate and let our elected officials know that they are in favor of something. Next slide, please.
So I've mentioned that we are now in the implementation phase since we finalized this strategic plan this fall. And what that actually looks like is that we're supporting work groups to act on kind of specific goal areas and strategic priorities throughout this plan. We're working to staff up our Mid-Columbia Office of Housing Stabilization and working to then develop more detailed work plans on various goals and actions that are outlined in the strategic plan. So Sarah Kellums, who is here tonight, is a good example of that. She was hired in early November to do resource development and community engagement work, knowing that we would really love to be able to plus up the funding that we have to expand and stabilize services in the region that support houseless folks, and help coordinate kind of the broader community conversations that happen around this topic. So I'm excited to be staffing up that office and bringing more capacity to the region to help think about and actually execute this regional work to improve our system overall. We're also working to continue coordinating with our partner organizations and local governments as we tackle these various plans in the strategic plan that you see here. And we are working to ensure that we're providing regular updates, both on a quarterly basis and on an annual basis, so that we can have this strategic plan be something that doesn't just sit on a shelf and collect dust, but also that doesn't just stay kind of stagnant, and that we update it as needed based on how the context is changing or new opportunities that arise or new challenges that we need to tackle. So we are excited to be actively working on the goals outlined in the strategic plan already. Next slide. So we'll wrap up by highlighting a couple of examples actually of how we're focusing on implementation. So just on the Oregon side of the river, we do have two really exciting projects we wanted to quickly highlight. The Navigation Center is a project that Mid-Columbia Community Action Council is taking the lead on developing, and it should be constructed and open by late 2023. So the Navigation Center is going to be a coordinated service center that brings multiple social service agencies and state agency staff together under one roof to be able to provide a more seamless experience and opportunity for folks who are experiencing houselessness or at risk of houselessness, or otherwise struggling with the effects of poverty, to access services, a wide range of services to help them stabilize overall. So we are really excited to be working with a wide variety of partners on the Oregon side of the river who will be housed in that center, but also, just as we do now, we will continue to coordinate closely with WAGAP as well as our other partners on the Washington side of the river, because as it's been mentioned, we do have, a whole lot of clients who don't necessarily see boundaries just based on county lines, and they have different connections to different communities throughout the Mid-Columbia region and throughout the gorge. Next slide, please. This is a quick, just kind of mock-up of the design for the Navigation Center site. We were fortunate enough to have a community member donate a 2.6 acre site for the construction of our Navigation Center, and it is on the west side of the Dalles. And our hope is to break ground in the next couple of months, and we'll have the navigation center, as you can see on the right there, and it'll have everything from a community room to an intake space to a small kind of kitchen, at least with warming supplies, to shared office space for various partner organizations that will be, providing services, and then meeting rooms so that they can support clients who are coming in to access services in kind of a one-stop shop format. And then on the left there, currently Mid-Columbia Community Action does operate a tiny house style shelter in the Dalles, and our plan is to actually move that shelter over to the Navigation Center site so that it's right next to the Navigation Center building. It is a pretty makeshift setup in kind of a public right-of-way over in an industrial part of the Dalles by the river, and we would love to make sure that it's set up in kind of a longer term, more sustainable way, and close to those resources that are going to be offered at the navigation. Next slide. And then one other exciting update that we just wanted to highlight that is happening on the Oregon side of the river, but again, that we anticipate will benefit both Oregonians and folks from Washington, is that Mid-Columbia Community Action Council has received funding from the Oregon Community Foundation and Oregon Legislature from Project Turnkey 2.0, which has allowed a good handful of agencies and local governments around Oregon in the first round to convert old hotels into transitional housing and shelter. So we are anticipating that within the next couple of months, we will close on a property, and we are hoping that that will allow us to convert hotel rooms and bring about 100, I think the total number is 102 new shelter beds to the region within less than 6 months from now. So we are really excited about that, and we'll be partnering with similar partners as at the Navigation Center to basically provide services on site, and are considering the Project Turnkey site to be somewhat of an annex to the Navigation Center, as it's closely tied into the idea of helping coordinate on-site services and help people get onto the path of housing stabilization and overall well-being quicker than they would otherwise, with navigating the wild goose chase of connecting to the right resources. So we are very excited about that. We're happy to take questions if you all have any, and that concludes our presentation.
Hi, so this is Scott. So thanks for taking the time for your presentation. There are quite a few that, let me back up. So housing and affordable housing aligns with the strategic plans of a lot of across the board. For example, the Lodge is actively looking for places where they can put up staff and early management candidates. The city has also identified affordable housing as a priority moving forward over the next couple of years. So my question to you, and forgive me if I missed this, is your program exclusively housing, or do you have some component to deal with those that are experiencing houselessness due to drug addiction?
You dropped off a little bit at the end there. Can you repeat the last part of that question?
Yeah, so my question is your program strictly affordable housing or housing programs, or does your program deal also with those that are experiencing houselessness due to drug addiction?
Great question. I'll let Leslie speak to that first from WAGAP's perspective, and then I'm happy to talk about the services we offer.
So I would say, Scott, when we're talking about housing, while we are focusing on affordable housing, our goal is to bring more housing to the region in any form. We know that we don't have enough housing stock. And so, yes, affordable housing is, one part of that solution. And yes, we do work with people who are suffering from different behavioral health issues. We actually have a new grant that came to us through Beacon Health, where we can provide the housing piece to a person who has either a substance use disorder, some other form of behavioral health, and we provide the housing, and then Beacon works really closely with them, providing that case management piece. So I would say when we're talking about housing, we're talking about all forms of housing, because we know that this is a universal problem that's going to take universal solutions, and we have to bring all housing to the table when we're talking about it.
And I will just add that Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, we operate 2 shelters on the Oregon side of the river. One is in the Dalles and one is in Hood River. And those shelters, I think within the last year, the last data poll that we did, close to half of the clients that we ended up serving at those shelters did identify as having experienced chronic houselessness, which is having experienced repeated houselessness and had some combination of behavioral health and or substance abuse backgrounds. So we have rules at our shelters around drug use and don't allow that, or alcohol use, but we do care about, setting standards and making sure that folks know that we're willing to have hope in them and help them connect to the right resources. And then in addition to the kind of overarching affordable housing goals you see here, we are working actively to develop more supportive housing on our side of the river as well, that will, I think, add a lot of value in general for the whole region, given the needs of folks who have more complex behavioral health or substance abuse issues.
Anyone else?
No, thank you. That's good.
So it looks like we're good with questions. So unless you guys have any closing comments, we really appreciate your presentation and thanks for attending tonight.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you for having us, and thank you to the city of Stevenson. You all have been a wonderful partner at the table. Leanna has participated in these meetings, and the city has also provided funding. So I know that the city, when you say that housing is something that you're concerned about, I know that you actually are, because you have put money behind that. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And if you have any questions, here's all of our contact information. If you have ideas, please feel free to email or contact any of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to modify the agenda slightly so that we can get our guests in first. So I would like to jump forward to 9D regarding the approving the interlocal agreement extension for law enforcement. So I haven't seen you face to face. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We had a chance to tell Kevin congratulations earlier this morning. So congratulations. So I'm assuming that this is what you're here for today.
Yes.
So in the contract, there is a clause that says we can extend the agreement for just 1 year, subject to the payment terms. So it would be with the CPI. And so that's what we will be doing, as Summer will be working on many things for first year. So we'll start working on negotiations by summer, fall of next year. So this allows time, nothing really
We talked
changes.
about it, yeah, basically sending it to give her a chance to get used to it.
Yeah, initially it was 6 months and weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it is okay if I speak.
Yeah, yes.
briefly?
Please.
So, and my thought process is this, is that, obviously with the change of the guards, that's always, just kind of a big shakeup. And I want to develop a relationship with you as well as the residents and business owners within the city of Stevenson. So they know the product that they're getting, so that when we do go to renegotiate, that there's a better understanding. I don't know what the past relationship has been, but my intention is to either me or my undersheriff being at these meetings once a month, so that we do have that, so we're available for questions. I realize that, you know, maybe you get some data of what our responses are within the city of Stevenson, and maybe a training calendar once a year, but that's not indicative of what we're really doing. And so I want to be available for those questions. I want to answer to you, and we work for you. And so that, you know, we can be able to provide a better service. And I think that that gives us a year to be able to, you know, develop those relationships, answer questions that you have, as well as the members of the city of Stevenson, whether it's business or residents.
And I don't know, if it's just a letter, yeah, so I'll just draft a letter, for the county to, also agree to, because that, again, there's nothing really more formal than that. It just says agree to, I believe, in writing, so.
Questions, thoughts, concerns?
I'd move to approve the 1-year extension under section 3.0 of the interlocal agreement with Skamania County for law enforcement services.
Is that a second,
Was that a
Christie?
second?
I was.
Okay,
Perfect. So we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so also under 9, I'd like to take a look at 9G, school district loan forgiveness request. Liana?
So got a call yesterday. The pool has the opportunity, they received a $50,000 grant, and they need to come up with some matching funds. And the granting agency stated that if the city forgave $25,000 of the loan that we provided them, that they would consider that as the matching funds versus them having to come up with additional funds. And when the $40,000 was additionally presented to them, it was from prior years. So before the taxing district was created, it was just rollover funds because they weren't open because of COVID. And so our intent was for it to initially be a grant, and they had wanted it to be a loan. So if it does change into a principal forgiveness, it's in line with the original intent that the city had. And I can follow up with contractual language and everything along those lines. So just late edition, didn't have time.
gotcha. Yeah, I remember it was initially a grant, and then it changed to being a loan, so.
Why did it change?
There was concerns that there was a double dip
Okay.
optic to it. So getting money from the city and then also getting money from residents. So, but kind of a different scenario now.
And so, yeah, in the packet is the letter from a pool commissioner, Hillary Everett.
Yep.
And then we have Andrea here to
You have
answer.
questions about it?
Mhm.
What's the grant for?
It's from the Furstenberg Foundation. It's a $50,000 grant for financial stability and capacity building. It's a 100% matched grant, so we have to receive 50,000 in order to receive their 50,000. And we have until December 31st, 2023 to accomplish that. They were generous enough to offer up to $25,000 of loan forgiveness from you all as part of that match. So if you forgive 25, then we'll receive 25 from them. And then we'll still have the other 25 up to 50, and we'll have all of 2023 to source that to receive the other 25 for it to be a full $50,000. You don't have to forgive 25. You could forgive $1 and they would match that as well. It's up to 25 in loan forgiveness. So any amount between $1 and $40,000 would thrill us in loan forgiveness, and it would give us a head start on receiving some of those funds, which we are in need of. And it's in the grant world. Once you get one grant, the more partners that you get on grants, that makes it easier to get the grants. And so all of it is part of it is optics too, like, hey, we got this grant and then the city's supporting us, and other people want to jump in. And that's the spirit behind the Furstenberg grant. That's why they didn't say you could match all 50, because they want, they want funds to come from lots of different sources in order to support the pool. So,
We want evidence of buy-in.
yes, exactly. Yep. Any other questions?
I don't have any other questions.
I would entertain a motion.
I'd motion to forgive 25,000 of the $40,000 principal loan provided to the Stevenson Community Pool District. Period.
Second,
So the first and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Approved.
Thank you so much.
You guys are welcome to stick around. Just saying.
Will the rest of it go that easy?
We were running you off.
We won't personally, if you want to boogie out that.
You just know it's a hefty agenda.
Yeah.
Oh.
I gotta work at 6 o'clock. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Have a nice Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
All right, let's move back to item 6A. This will be our first public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing at 6:45. Staff report, Leona, on the budget amendment number 2.
So budget amendment number 2 has some revised changes. One of them being adding the Healing Scars fund. And then another big change is related to the audit we recently went through, and it was related to an accounting difference that needed to take place. And so when we received our design loan for the first phase of the wastewater treatment plant project, and we received about almost $600,000 in forgivable principal for that. And when we closed out that loan, there was we didn't close out the loan, we didn't sign the contract until late January of 2022. But it referenced 2021 as here's your revised schedule, and it will be effective as of June 30th, 2021. And so there was some ambiguity as far as whether it would be 2021 or 2022. And so because it was signed in late 2022, they said it's a 2022 adjustment, and we need to actually record it, even though we're cash basis and there's no change in cash with this. We still have to record it as an expense because we're paying that principal, and a grant because they forgive it. So that's the biggest change for
It's
this.
just a number shuffle.
Number shuffle does not change the ending balance of anything. Yes. So, but it's a $600,000 number shuffle.
Right, it looks
Yes,
cute on paper,
it
but then
does.
you look at what actually happened and you're like, oh,
Right. Right.
okay, well, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So that's, yeah, like I said, the biggest change.
I remember that meeting.
Okay, thank you. So I didn't see anybody.
Any hands?
Unless
Any
Kelly.
Unless Kelly has a comment. So seeing nobody in the gallery, nobody as an attendee.
Right.
So it looks like no public comment. So I'd like to close the public hearing at 6:48. Is there any additional staff or council discussion on this matter?
I move to approve the ordinance 2022-1184, amending the 2022 budget.
okay.
You got it.
Did you close the public hearing?
Yeah.
Yep,
Yes.
I did. Yep, it's 48. Okay, first and a second, do we need clarification on the second, Johanna? We'll give it to David. David has a second.
Yeah.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Moving along.
Okay.
All right, next up, I'd like to open the public hearing. Another public hearing at 6:48 in regards to the 2023 sewer rates. Leona.
Okay. So the rates are going to go up 15%. And this is more or less in line with what was projected with the rate study that was done with the wastewater treatment plant as far as the progression of the rates. It is less than what they initially were going to be, because in part we received about 40% in grants versus loan. And then with COVID, the cost increase over the project has gone up quite a lot more than what was anticipated. However, over time, and I'm looking at the last page of the staff memo, where you'll see in 2020 and 2021, where we have more revenues than expenses, that gap is then being used in 2022, 2023, and 2024 to cover the project cost overruns. As you'll see in some of the change orders, there are maintenance items that are now coming to light for the wastewater treatment plant. Some of them caused because of all the work that we're doing, and it's just putting additional stress on the system. And so, and of course, things are at failure because that's the reason why we needed to do these in the first place. And so we're using those funds to pay for that versus having to go out for an additional loan to then create that additional debt repayment, increase that debt repayment. So we're using those funds, even though it seems like there's a bit of a gap for maintenance items and that cost escalation. But in the end, we do anticipate the costs to cover expenses as well as set asides. And the main reason for that ramp up as well is because when we do start paying off that debt, that is going to be a significant cost increase, and we don't want to take that hit all at once. So if we didn't do a 15% increase now, what it means is later on, when we have the $500,000 payment for our loan, then we would have to do a 25 to 50, even possibly 200% increase to cover that all in 1 year. And so, yes, we're doing it as gradual as we can. And then the rate study that we're going through as well will also help to refine what we have going on.
So when we were going over this morning, the chart, the one above that.
Here, let me.
This is, I think, is one of the more telling charts because you can see that there was hardly any increase in the rates at the same time that there was no planning for the eventual needed upgrades.
Right.
So you see,
2002,
yes, the upgrades happen, and then now all of a sudden we have to pay for those upgrades. So it's kind of a one-to-one situation there. So that's why we find ourselves, it's hard. And I get these comments everywhere I go, man, that's gonna hurt. Yes, if we would have had a more aggressive rate increase, we wouldn't have this hockey stick that we're looking at today. And the other part, when I am answering to those, is that I too am seeing that go up. And I don't like it either, but we have to be able to pay the bills. We have to be able to pay it back. So, and then the other thing that we talked about is that we do have we call them consultants coming in that are going to take a very top-down look at our rates, the rate setting, including development charges, and all of those things. And also taking another look at how we are charging our industrial users. Because that's one thing we want to make sure of is that the residences are not holding up industrial users that everybody's paying their fair share. So yeah, it stinks. But this is, and hopefully we'll have a much better picture by the time this study is done. Liana is being very fluid with this is happening and we need to take care of it right now. And keeping our head in the sand can't happen.
But I don't know, I'm looking at these rates. And in 2026, $176.35.
Now, that's after this study, so I'm hoping that we're gonna find a way to not have that. Be able to pay off our loans and not have that same sewer charge. That's crazy. So
What are the possible paths to that?
What's that?
What are the possible paths to not, when we go through this consulting process, that we're going to avoid those crazy high monthly costs, like.
system development charges would be one. Changing, taking a really hard look at what industrial users are paying. So that they're paying at least their fair share, making sure that they are at least. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a cheerleader for the big rates. I just look at the why we have to do it.
Right. My big thing is like, you look at that from 2002 until 2000, what is that, 16, 17? I mean, it's pretty much flat, right? And we knew, well, you would think we knew that at some point we're gonna have to upgrade the system. At some point, we're gonna have to do something different than we're doing. But the rates were going up. So if those have been climbing slowly, we could have put some money back.
No
It
effort
would have been
made
different.
to sandbag.
And
Right.
so,
So I understand
Partly-
it hurts,
partly-
but
right, and partly in their defense, they did reach out to a consultant that said, it cut maybe $1 to $2 million to do some upgrades. Not to
I'm not
this
trying to throw
extent,
stones, I'm
but
just
yes,
saying,
yeah,
I
yeah,
see
yes, yeah.
like it's that visual right there goes, wow. We're spending a lot of money right now to upgrade the system because we have
Right.
to.
Right.
And
That's backed up
that
by
wasn't,
administrative order.
And that's why I included the administrative order in the packet saying it's not,
it's not a, hey, maybe we think we should.
right,
It's, this
You
has to
shall.
happen
Right.
now.
You shall.
I get it.
Unfunded mandate.
Yeah. So I get it. I mean, all of us here are having to pay the same thing, so nobody's.
and,
pumped about it.
and there is a balance because not only do sewer rates, just the base rates impact residents, the SDCs and base rates then impact growth and connections,
Mhm.
as well as the industrial users. So
So where's
There's a
the,
balance.
where are the water rates? Then how do they associate with this?
So the water rates are already on a set 5% year over year increase, and that's from the water system plan that was approved in 2018. So,
And this is a 15%
and this
increase
is a
each year?
15% increase. I analyze it every year just to see if it is necessary. So so COVID, I think we cut it back to 12.5%. Last year, I think I kept it at 12.5%. This year, because of all of the cost increases, it's 15%, and it looks to be 15% over the next few years. Again, to get to that rate, I don't know then what the steady state will be afterwards, once all of this is done and we reach that top point. Because another thing, not only are the loan costs increasing, but the operation costs are going to be increasing too, because you now have a whole nother aeration ditch that you have to pay electricity on. And then you also will need another operator. And so those two costs combined, and then hauling is getting more and more expensive with increased fuel costs. So it's not just the debt, it's the overall cost of operations of the plant that is also increasing to make.
And so then the other, because it's such a rosy picture.
Right.
SDC charges is what you'll pay when you bring in new business.
Mhm.
So if that is too tough of a nut to crack, then it is a definite deterrent to not revitalization, but development, growth and development. Exactly. The thing is, though, that I have to keep reminding myself, if you don't get the money, then the residents continue to take it.
Yeah.
Right.
So as much as it is painful to admit there's going to be an obstacle to development, we have to keep in mind the fact that there's a big number that we're trying to keep down.
So what percentages each year does that go up then to get to that 176.35 a month?
15.
That's 15% each year.
And that's as far as my rate projections currently go.
when are we doing the rate study?
I'm giving them information right now, and the goal is to get information, to get everything done and wrapped up by the summer.
If we are, and this is just me, but if we are going to approve a rate increase of 15%, I would prefer to do it for 1 year, take a look at the rate study, and then go move from there.
I assume that's.
Rather than do a lump approval all the way to 2026.
No, so
we're
the,
only approving
the ordinance, is just for the 15% increase this year, and then there's a default, if nothing happens, it's a 5% increase, just as the water rates are. So, yeah, rates for 2024 and beyond shall increase 5% per year if, yeah, the last page of the ordinance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a different. So again, you know, this ordinance is anticipated just to be for this year. It is not a multi-year.
The chart was just to show us where it's headed,
Yes. Mhm.
potentially.
Right. But it, like I said, it does have that caveat. If nothing happens, it's still 5% for the following year.
There's a very real possibility that by this time next year, we'll have a pretty firm grasp on what the final total is going to be. Change orders and notwithstanding.
Yeah.
So then that will all combine. So you'll have. Well,
Rate study, the totals, the whole.
Yeah,
I mean, so talking about the wastewater treatment plant project and loan repayments and everything. Right here, I have $12.1 million as funding for the wastewater treatment plant. Right now it's closer to it's 13 million and going up. So we're still about $1 million short. And so that's again where that gap is coming, is going to pay. So we can request additional funds for DOE. However, if we have the cash on hand, I would rather throw it at the treatment plant than then have increased loans. But again, it depends on what additional maintenance items come up. Like I mentioned, one of the items is about $75,000 for some maintenance that we're having the contractor do. And so as more of those items come up, we're having to pay for, because the plant is just upgrades. It did not address maintenance, and we have a lot of failing parts.
oh, holy smokes, we have, yeah, I'm out of order.
Hey,
Oh, you opened it? Yeah.
yeah, he opened it.
So,
but
well, we
close time?
went right past the closing into
Right.
discussion, so I closed public hearing at 7:02. We're in the midst of the staff discussion, council discussion.
It's hard when there's someone in the audience.
It's kind of eerie.
Yeah, I think this is the first, I mean,
Mhm.
clean the house this time.
I actually anticipated that.
Me too.
I'll move to approve ordinance 2022-1190 revising the sewer rates.
Second,
First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Do you have an update on the?
I do. So again, that replacement pump. So we were having to lease a pump for a period of time. And that we got the new pumps in and they were able to connect them. So we were able to return that leased pump. And I think there's just some additional electrical things that need to take place. They're going to take a second pump out to get rebuilt. So we'll have a main pump and a backup and we'll be good to go. And then the exciting thing is that they're scheduled to pour the concrete after Christmas. So between Christmas and New Year is when they will be pouring concrete. And that is if the concrete plant is open and and depends on the weather. For the concrete plant to be open too. But they also have a part that they're waiting on to fix their scale on their computer. So want to know how much concrete they give us, go figure. And then we also have a lot of equipment arriving. And so we're working on an agreement, or the contractor is working on an agreement with the fairgrounds to use the fairgrounds as place to stage some of the equipment because it's quite big. And some of the equipment is arriving, but some of it is also delayed. So we're working on some of those issues, but I think overall, again, because of some of this weather delays, it should all shake out okay. We're only on change order 4, but there are 2 or 3 already in the works. So, but most of them are within my authority to sign, and again, are included in that contract notification in the council packet. So that's pretty much most of it. We think the fish are still alive, but we don't know.
Can't see him.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah. I think in the wintertime they kind of go low. We don't know.
Fair enough.
So,
I just like the idea of fishing. That's cool.
right.
Right.
And I was gonna bring up some photos. If I have time throughout the meeting, I'll try to pull them up towards the end. But it looks really cool. So
It's a big hole.
big hole.
I need to go
Yes.
take a tour.
So-
I just need to go down there.
Yeah.
And we schedule it like it. Just
Yeah, I'm not sure how close you can get without a vest and a hat.
I
Depends on what time.
right.
Hey.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Easier to get forgiveness and permission.
But you know what? Coming from former officer Cox.
Okay,
I have learned a thing or two.
Ah, cool.
all right.
Okay, thank you.
So we do have one last guest for the very important part. So Tuesday, there's been a couple of workshops leading up, and we talked about, we're moving on to the Park Plaza contract.
Okay.
As you know, we took a look at the lease agreement last meeting or the meeting before. Realized that there was a shift, almost a thaw, in the thoughts of some of the commissioners on what was concerning to us. We had the meeting, kind of a workshop with Adam and a couple commissioners, and then wanted some more comments on Tuesday at their meeting. So there was 6 or 7 of us that went in for public comment, and there was a great variety of different types of discussions. So we had business owners, that are county residents and have lived all over the county. I spoke. We had Angie from the chamber was there, and Kelly went to the meeting, and they voted unanimously to approve the contract.
One
Nice. That's good to hear.
Yeah. I don't know if have you guys seen Rudy?
Mhm.
Rudy?
Mhm.
So he gets that last letter, and if it doesn't say he's going to Notre Dame, he's done. And he got that when he realized that he'd been accepted. I had that moment because that was it. If that was a negative vote, then we pull that fancy sign and the big 4x4 post out of the lawn, right? And then we're done. And it was unanimous. So it's not kind of a big deal. It's a huge deal.
That's a long
So,
time coming.
and I implore them, please let this agreement be the start of the next phase, not the end of a great idea.
Right.
So it is very exciting to bring you guys this development. So this is the part where we finish the deal and approve the contract, the agreement.
Did you want to let Kelly say?
I would love for Kelly to speak up.
Hi, everyone. Kelly O'Malley McKee here with the Stevenson Downtown Association. And I just wanted to be on here to share, well, Scott pretty much stole up all of it, but but yes, it was Tuesday was a landmark moment for the Courthouse Park Plaza project. It's this contract and, the back and forth between the county and the city it was something that I inherited and I started in March of 2020. So this has been in the works for over 2 years. I know that you've all discussed it in the past, and I know Liana and Ken have worked hard on this. And yeah, Tuesday was wonderful. We, as Scott said, we had a great representation of folks sharing why this is a landmark moment and why the plaza is important, and to not only to Stevenson, but to county residents. And that's, you know, one of the points that a lot of county residents have brought forth to the commissioners is, how does this only benefit Stevenson? And the answer is no, especially if you went to that parade, the light parade for Christmas in the Gorge, and you saw that people were going, just overflowing into the streets. Those weren't all Stevenson people. Those were our neighbors across the county. And that's how trunk or treat was. Everyone across, you know, the west to the east is coming to downtown, and this downtown is our community living room, and it's not just for Stevenson, although we love it when Stevenson folks, of course, come downtown. But anyway, Tuesday was great, and I'm here to, in advance, thank you all for your support, and urge you to approve this so we can move forward and beyond this hurdle. And then Liana and I both have a lot of work to do.
We already have meetings scheduled for next week, so yeah.
I would make a motion if I could.
Christie.
I am making the motion. I would like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of interlocal agreement for operation and maintenance of Skamania County Courthouse Plaza with Skamania County as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
Wait a second. This is the part. One pause. We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Huzzah. Woohoo.
Yeehaw.
Is my woohoo on the minutes?
There you go.
Right, yeah. We had to make sure, yeah.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. On the record.
You okay there, Mayor?
So excited.
It's been a long.
Yeah. It has.
Yeah.
Before I was mayor, I sat over there and said, this is our plan. Well, what's it going to look like? Well, do you give us permission to go look for designs? And then the county commissioner said, we like what you're doing here. Tell us more. Yeah, that's the single, well, that's what started. It was the impetus for the whole downtown association. Now, obviously the program has grown exponentially since then, but yeah, pretty big deal.
I think one of the earliest contracts I was looking at was 2014.
I got into it in 2015, so it's been a long time.
When I first came down here for my interview, like 4.5 years ago, and I was wandering around downtown, there was the 4x4s with the plan. I'm like, that's going to be sweet.
It's very exciting. Okay, back to business. All right, so we do have the 2023 proposed budget ordinance. This is the first reading. Keep in mind that we have been working on the budget for the last couple of months, and this needs to be approved by the end of 2022. So even though it is the first reading, I would love for you to make a motion to approve the ordinance. So, Liana.
And it's the first reading of the ordinance. It's not the first reading of the budget.
Correct.
So I did include some changes from the last meeting, and they're listed in a separate document. A lot of it is the tourism funds, just reconciling those to what was approved. We received 3 grants for TIB, which is amazing. And so those are included in the project costs.
Is that 2, 3, and 4 up there, the TIB?
Yeah, yes, yeah, TIB
Mhm.
chip seal, TIB McAvoy overlay, and then the loop road,
Okay.
right? And then the costs are down in the 5, down below that as well under, so contracted labor is the chip seal grant, and then the McAvoy overlay, and then the loop road rebuild and sidewalk. It's kind of split into 2 because there's multiple portions of that. The loop road water line was already in the budget for next year, so all of that will be done.
The equipment purchase up down there near the bottom.
That is because of the vehicle costs. So I think the quote that we got was $90,000 fully outfitted with a snowplow and utility box.
Okay.
There was another question about something pending, and so we still haven't heard back from them on what that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think those are, the larger items. And what's on next? Yeah, that was it.
What's going on with the affordable housing line items in there?
Oh, I forgot to increase it for this year. So I didn't include the 20, it was basically 2020 all over again. And so I just forgot to change the beginning and ending balances. So that was all that was.
I'd move to approve ordinance 2022-1191, adopting the 2023 budget as presented.
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Christie, did we get your vote, Christie?
Aye.
Got it, thank you.
I said it, maybe it was muted.
Your lips are moving.
All right, so next up, 9A, Liana is going to present an update to the strategic plan.
Since we're all just looking at the screen anyway, I'll share it again. Tiny. Okay, so I'll make it bigger. In our strategic plan, we had our 3 areas. So the first big area was the organizational health and sustainability, with governance, financial health, and internal processes is the tasks or the strategies underneath that. And then these were the tasks that we kind of voted on, more or less, within that. And then staff kind of tweaked them as well. And so the items in blue are items that have been completed. And then the items in green are on track. Gray is not yet started, and yellow is slow progress. So we're on track to do additional leadership training with council. We're on track. We're starting to hold monthly workshops to have more in-depth discussion, and then also required trainings that help with overall governance. Yeah, starting yesterday. We're analyzing the current revenue sources. So the SDC charges and utility rate restructuring is in process. We're going to be reviewing the development plan review fees starting summer of next year. That will be sort of after we go through our engineering standards review and revision, resources, training, and tools for staff. That one, we're working on GIS. So we have GIS already up and running, and our contractor Flow Analytics, they're working on taking all of our data and doing some QC work on the various data points that we have. And we have a meeting scheduled for January to do some follow-up on that.
Who's trained to do the use the SRI?
So we'll have multiple licenses, and it'll be basically 1 general office staff license, and I think 2 remote licenses, and then 1 super user.
Who's going to do it
Everyone.
here? Okay. All right. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, everyone, yeah. I mean, some people might use it more than others, but in the end, it's everyone. So that new position that we have, that's one of the things that they're gonna be working on as well. But in general, yeah. The ClearGov budgeting display tool, there's just some mismatch of some earlier data, and I just need clarification from them as far as where it shows up or where the bucket goes. I mean, I think it's fine, but just further data validation is needed. And so the 2023, and so from 2018 to 2023, it's fine because that was one set of data that I gave them, and then I gave them the previous set of data, and then just trying to line it all. But so the 2023 budget information in there is accurate, just the earlier stuff, and so working through that with them. Staff attended the informed consent training, and we're working on implementing that with the parking policy changes. So more to come on that. Asset management and work order tools optimization. We canceled the contract with Brightly. It just was not working for us, and I didn't want to spend money for another year on a tool that wasn't working, that we weren't going to continue with. So right now we don't really have any work order system, but back to what we were doing, which has been working fine. And so we're also looking at some software demos. We looked at one for, it's called CityWorks, and it integrates really well with Esri in that you don't have to have multiple databases to enter information in. If you enter data in one, it automatically enters into another. If you enter it into another, so it talks really nicely with Esri. And so that's the one that we're looking at. It is not in the budget at all. And we kind of put that on pause while Carolyn is out. And so we'll pick that up when she comes back as far as what we may be working towards. But the idea is to get a 3D program to do asset management, to better visualize and see where your problems are and what you need to fix. We're continue to evaluate additional tools and office equipment and or office reconfiguration. That reconfiguration still on hold. We haven't made any final decisions. The new council layout's kind of working for now. So we'll continue to look at that. We definitely need to have something done before we hire a new person because they don't have a place to sit, but we'll work on that. So we do have a contract with Transform Design Group, and we'll get with them on how to work things before the new person comes on. And then we also close the office to the public on Fridays, which has actually greatly helped with productivity. It is amazing what we've been able to get done. We are still here, and people can still call us and reach us if they dial our extension. And we can return phone calls, return emails. It is a lot easier to get things done when you have uninterrupted blocks of time.
More work in the same amount of time.
Yes, exactly. So as far as a customer standpoint goes, your permits can get processed more efficiently, and we can move forward other projects in a more timely manner. So emergency planning, the fire department strategic plan is being led by the fire department. I'm sorry, that didn't move down. And so that one's a bit delayed.
Is it you still resigning?
I don't know.
You haven't received a documentation?
No, I have not.
Okay.
And then incorporating the hazard mitigation plan into our CIP still needs to take place. And then we have existing emergency plans for our water sewer department, but they will be reviewed and updated as well. As a side note, on an annual basis, if not biannual, I need to prepare a vulnerability assessment and emergency response plan for our water and sewer systems as part of our USDA loan. So that is reviewed on a regular basis. But anyway, let's see, staffing structure, again, we have that new position included in the personnel policy revision, and they're in the 2023 budget. Depending on what happens with the fire department strategic plan, again, we'll continue to look at what needs to change. The fire hall really hasn't started yet because it all depends on the strategic plan. Again, parking, winter of 23 is sort of when that fee and lieu program, and by winter of 23, I mean like January, February, March, so in the next few months, as well as modifying parking regulations, loading zones, restricted parking, time limits, etc. So, and that's just not just in the downtown area, that's citywide. So we're working on our plan of action for that. And then Safe Routes to School will be in the spring of summer 23. And then the parking improvement plan depend on the fee and lieu program decisions. Current maintenance is always ongoing, but it's combined with the asset management program selection as far as identifying, planning, and prioritizing deferred maintenance. We applied for an RCO planning grant for the parks plan, and they got more grants than they thought they would. Go figure. More grant applications. And so rather than giving an answer on December 15th, like they said they would, they pushed it out to January 15th to provide more time for review. So I'll know in January now when I had hoped to hear back today as far as where our grant fell. So, and then that just kind of depends on the rest of it, just depends on the parks plan. Shoreline Public Access Plan, phase 1 will be completed by June 2023, matching the grant requirements. Right now for the broadband plan, we're confirming our process and partners. Ben reached out to the broadband office, and we just wanted to make sure we knew what workload we would be signing up for. And I think they confirmed that it was not much on our end. And so we said, okay, yes, that'd be great. But they also wanted to see if the county, again, to get more bang for the buck, if the county wanted to be involved and other partners to make it a better, more robust plan. And so I think we're in that phase of still reaching out to those.
And it wasn't that long ago that Washington was one of the few states that did not have a broadband office. And the fact that we have one, it is viable. And it's moving, moving the rock. That's pretty nice.
So while it hasn't really started, we're still kind of starting it a little bit. Undergrounding plan, that one will probably be started in the fall of 24. It would require us to get a consultant to create a plan in coordination with the PUD.
And utilities. Other utilities. Like
Wave and yeah. But the PUD is one that owns all poles.
Right.
So that may want
So we take them down.
Yeah. We're working with aligning zoning and street standards for the urban growth boundary. The county controls the timeline and process on this. And we had been in talks with Tim Elsey, the public works director. He is leaving the county. And so we want to make sure that we have conversations with whoever follows him. And then the planning community development director also left the county, but Mike Beck is the interim director. And so he has some knowledge of the issue, but we'll bring it up with him because he was a former planning commission member. So, and then again, city county joint planning, partnering more on overall public safety. The new sheriff starts January 1st. So we'll see where that goes.
It's interesting that she made the comment about the she was questioning what we've received in the past and what they were going to be presenting in the future, so.
So, coordinate with legislative visits and requests. This is one thing that we talked about earlier today, actually, was how important it is to have a legislative action plan and to meet with your legislators on what your goals are, or what your concerns are. And if we can coordinate that with the county, and not just with the county too, but with the port and other agencies as well, it just makes it that much stronger. And so when the newly elected officials take office in January, we'll work with the county to see sort of how they see that going forward.
State rep isn't too far away.
Right.
Sit right there, not 6 hours.
This morning, yeah.
But it does.
And then I don't know how it got on there, but developing Carson Ridge Road, that's what the question mark is for. That's why lead stakeholder and timeline is yet to be identified. But a backup to 14 would be appreciated, I'm sure.
That did come up. When did that?
When they were doing construction.
Yeah, when they were like,
14.
There is a backup.
There is.
You
It's
just have to
not
have a
very,
four-wheel drive.
yeah, somebody was talking about, yeah,
Pretty
they
primitive.
blew a tire and they did this. Yeah.
when you get more traffic going both ways, it becomes more challenging.
Right.
So again, analyzing and develop tools for development, talking about city growth, zoning and minimum density requirements. Are waiting on the workforce housing discussion. The reducing SDCs will be analyzed with rate restructuring. I'm gonna say we will probably not be reducing SDCs, but it may be a tool as part of the workforce housing. And the planning commission will be reviewing that and discussing it in the summer.
So the waiting on the workforce housing discussion, who's having the workforce housing discussion? If you're waiting on that.
The planning commission is going to start that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Mhm. And then again, yeah, that depends on workforce housing for the community land trust and other tools. Those are part of that discussion as well as whether or not we need to purchase property. So, yeah. And this is where the planning commission does some of the heavy lifting of what does the community want from a zoning perspective, and other tools. And then the council tends to then pick it up from there. I can talk with Ben if council is interested in possibly doing joint workshops on the workforce housing as well. We can see how that can look. Development standards, again, so engineering standards, I have the statement of work, have not had time to look at it. So that'll be on your January agenda for approval. Their total cost for that is, I think, $81,000, and our initial projection was $75,000. So it's kind of right in there. And then parking requirements again, see the task, it depends on the fee and lieu program and other regulations. And then the circulation planning and overly flexible engineering standards, those are again dependent on the engineering standards. And then one thing that planning commission is looking at right now is an annexation policy. And again, I think Ben had mentioned that they may want a joint meeting on that as well to get on the same
It's been a
page.
while since we've done the joint session, but
Yeah.
we actually got some good value out of that. Got a good program out of that, so look forward to that.
So the goal is to get everything completed by mid-23 for that annexation. So overall, we have 3 tasks completed, 15 are on track, 5 are slow progress, none are actually off track, and then we have 22 that aren't started.
And the ones that aren't sure to have, there's obvious valid reasons, like it's not like we just decided we didn't want to do it yet.
Right. So there we go. That's the update.
Thank you.
It's kind of like a half year update, I guess.
Well, no, that was, I mean, it's
July is-
important to look back at that
Yeah.
after we had our meeting. We tried to stay on task. But as a council, we only see it, once a month.
Right.
It's nice to look at the whole thing and go, oh,
Right.
there we go. We are going. So thank you.
Right, Lana? Salary schedule?
Okay, so I forget which meeting I mentioned it at when we were talking about the budget. But when I did the salary review, the range of salary changes, it goes from 2% to 13%. And all of those salary ranges were analyzed to 2022 rates. And so then the COLA was applied to that so that it's not, again, out of whack. So if someone got a 13% salary adjustment, but then no COLA, then you're just back to, you would have to figure you're behind again in the end. So, and then also, as we discussed, the COLA of 5% for this year for 2023 and 2024 kind of spreads that 8% out. I'll still look at 2024 to see what it's doing, just to make sure that it is still in line. And I do look at everyone's salaries on an annual basis, but one of the ones that was nerve-wracking the beginning of the year, last year was, or this year, was the Public Works Director. So I knew that one needed to be increased based on the pool of applicants that we received. We have a great Public Works Director. However, making sure that that position is still set up for success, and then also making sure that we're paying the person that we have for what the job's worth.
Right.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, retention factors.
Retention's
Right.
huge. Yeah.
right. So,
Cities our size don't get engineers.
Right. Institutional knowledge also that you gain. And then, if you're just not paying them, eventually someone's got to find, they got to take care of themselves. So.
and one of the challenging things too with some of these jobs is they can't be done remotely. So, some of those perks that you have, go away when you have to show up. So, yeah. Do what we can with what we
Weird,
have.
'cause 2 years it would have been suck it up. Come to work.
Right, right. Mhm.
Are you ready for a motion, sir? I propose a motion to approve, resolution 2022-404, adopting the 2023-24 salary schedule.
Second. Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, personnel policy update, Liana.
Okay, so in the personnel policy, there are two major changes. One is adding a certification pay for a professional engineer. And so what this does is this gets added in essence to your Public Works Director position. So we don't specifically have a Public Works Director / city engineer position. However, if someone does have that certification, we can then pay them accordingly for that skill. And so that's one of the major changes. And then the other one is the position of Planning and Public Works Assistant. And there are a couple of changes that we are requesting in addition to what was in the packet. And it's highlighted here. So one of them is to we added, just for clarification, review applications for compliance with policies such as Stevenson Municipal Code and engineering standards. And then under may approve and issue minor permits at the discretion of the department head, such as right-of-way and minor land use permits. A minor land, maybe a fence, those are pretty minor. And then, again, in assisting with asset management to include conducting an inventory and logging information in spreadsheets and or other asset tracking software. So those are some of the changes in here. And then as this position is taking on some of the roles that were done by the deputy clerk treasurer 2, which is now renamed utility clerk. Those were then taken out of that job description. And what we also had discussed was after this person is hired and is in the role for a couple of months, we will review sort of who's doing what and see if any of the job descriptions need to change, because Mary will be retiring this year. And so we want to make sure that any changes to her job description are done before we go out for that as well. So,
Other duties as assigned.
but we would like to make sure that the person applying has an expectation of what those might be. Yeah, so, and then, yeah, those are the only 3 major changes. Minor.
3 changes of note.
3 changes of note. So if you wanted to make a motion, it would be to approve the resolution revising the personnel policy as amended. Or
Okay,
as
David.
discussed, as
Go for
amended
it.
as discussed.
Motion to approve resolution 2022-405, revising the personnel policy as amended.
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 That's all it is. Unanimous.
What?
Ready for 3? Brings us to E.
Okay, so this customer, as she stated in her letter, she acquired the property through her divorce. And about a year or 2 ago, we were alerted to the fact that it was a duplex.
Being used as a duplex?
And let her know that it's not allowed to be a duplex. And then she said, well, okay, I'm moving into it, but still never completed the process for it to be declared an ADU. And then she also has another property. And she, as we were going through some other challenges with that property, she stated, well, she was living there. And it's like, so how are you living in both? She also listed the property as a duplex for sale about a few months ago.
Without completing the ADU.
Listed it as a duplex and is not zoned to be a duplex.
Yeah, but she hasn't
So-
completed an ADU.
She hasn't completed an
Application.
ADU application. She hasn't completed any applications. And so, but in the end, knowing that there are 2 units there, we decided to start billing her for the 2 units. But stating that this does not mean that you are in compliance with the code, but we didn't want to continue them to benefit from 2 units
Right.
and the utilities not benefiting from that use. So, so when we gave her that letter, she then requested that we waive the back billing because again, we did the back billing for the period of time, which is what we can do, which is 6 years. Not knowing when that was put into place, her not providing any documentation for anything. So as far as we know, it's all unpermitted because we don't have anything. And so that's where this request is very different from us discovering like, oh, sorry, we didn't charge you for this, we didn't catch it. And so that I haven't calculated it out. Part of it is just I've been very busy, so but I can. And then the question that I have to Ken is since the emergency proclamation was lifted, can the COVID back billing waiver still apply? Which is what that Attorney General's letter was about.
I hadn't really thought about that. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's I'd have to cogitate on that for a few minutes. But yeah, I mean, otherwise we'd have to characterize it as some sort of a settlement of a claim, of a dispute, if you will. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
because part of the letter was about COVID, and so, I mean, that if it can't be, it doesn't fall under that, then it's a different, it's a little bit of different coverage, not a whole different conversation, but that's part of the conversation.
Right, and Benna brought it up, and I hadn't had a chance to look into it, but she may have been given a waiver for a building that we didn't catch, which is the one on Lutheran Church Road, which is why she knew to do the waiver, because I don't believe in the letter that we sent for this other unit that we had mentioned that there's the opportunity to do a waiver.
But she may have gotten a waiver, a letter for a waiver on the other property.
Right, because I do believe that one was
One of the,
permitted.
Was any part of that backfilling period during the COVID emergency period?
It was, yes. So that's one thing that Scott had mentioned, maybe the waiving the portion that was during COVID.
Yeah. At least that would be, you certainly have a basis for waiving it during the COVID period.
Right.
After, you'd have to probably have some other reason, but that might be a compromise.
Mhm. So,
Out of curiosity, how do the hardships brought on by COVID-19 lead to the loss of the largest portion of my income by suddenly becoming unable to rent the home as a duplex and only being able to rely on one family? What does COVID have to do with that? To me, it has nothing to do with it. If they're renting it out as a duplex,
right, it's not a joint living space, so COVID wouldn't
COVID
necessarily
wouldn't apply.
be an issue with that, would it?
No.
I don't know that, I haven't seen the actual location, so I don't know what we're talking about, but.
Okay. Moving on.
so I guess the question is, do you want to waive any of the backfilling?
I'm not gonna make that motion.
Because it's on there, doesn't mean you're up.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm not.
Mhm.
No.
Okay.
9H, palate cleanser. Then gonna,
F.
F.
yep. Oh, yeah. skip
Yeah.
right over it.
So One Prevention Alliance has a lease with us for the downstairs, and it was a 2-year lease, so it ends in December, and so this one I just changed the dates to make it another 2-year lease, so it'll end in 2024. But it's still kind of a month-to-month lease, so yeah.
Anything else we need to know about
That was
that?
it.
All right.
Nothing changes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2-year lease agreement with Educational Services District 112 as presented, period.
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we can move on to healing scars.
Now, Ben.
Now then,
On it.
That's great.
So I have a just short 2-page memo in the packet for you all with 2 questions. Both of them essentially relate to who qualifies for funding out of this fund that you all just created. So the first one, the program as currently drafted would exclude people whose septics fail from access to this. The original rationale was that there would be competition for these funds. And if your system fails and you're within 300 feet of the sewer line, you're compelled to connect no matter what. And if there's competition, then not providing that to those people who let their septic systems fail. We've started to wonder if that's the right approach. And so we're bringing that question to you. The second question we're asking for you is who should qualify in terms of the income range. The income range will determine whether distribution of these funds is a grant program or a loan program. And we are asking for advice about whether you want us to go forward with a loan program, understanding the limitations we might have or the lack of experience that we have in managing a loan program. For what it's worth, the documents are all coming together well as far as rolling this program out as a completely new program. We've got the handbook that you've seen in the past that has policy guardrails, and then we've got draft deeds of trust and loan agreements that they go with the program entirely, and Ken's reviewed those. So it's really just getting these last few bits of advice before presenting you with the final documents with a final draft for consideration.
Something to consider is that more customers is good. Customers dilutes the rate process.
Absolutely.
Making it easier for a new customer. Good. Ben's point is the city prepared to be alone, manage a loan program, or is it strictly? Ben, can you elaborate on how the fund would be sustainable? If it was just a
No. I can hope how it may be sustainable. So it is seeded with money from the city as an in-kind mitigation for a water quality impact. So the city had to do water quality mitigation for the storm project on Rock Creek Drive, and the resource agencies required us to set aside some funds as mitigation for that. And so this fund would be open to that if others need a source for water quality mitigation. It could also be funded by transfers from other city funds. So the sewer fund can actually be transferred into this if you had excess money floating around in that, which you don't apparently, based on conversations from earlier, or it could be funded from the general funds. So I hope that answered your question, Mr. Mayor.
So we don't have necessarily a current plan for long-term sustainability of this program right now. Not that there couldn't be one, but there's not one in place currently, is what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah. And then as part of the final documents that will get you the next time, there will be an estimate of the total number of systems that would qualify for the program. So that's septic systems that are in proximity to both a fish-bearing stream and an existing sewer line. How many of them are there? And then we've got estimates for generally what a typical replacement would cost. And so we'll multiply one by the other and show you what the overall need is. That need is currently being filled by $10,000 from our mitigation.
So what would a loan program look like? Somebody says, we would like to do this. Can we borrow some money from the city? So where does that money come from?
Good question.
Same
Same
currently the
Same
distribution at 10,000.
But it would have to be paid back as opposed to given away.
Correct.
Right, so if you're talking about long-term sustainability, a loan program is more sustainable than a grant program because those funds will come back that you can then
But it would
reloan.
require the city to manage a loan program
Yes.
as well.
Or you could have another entity manage that.
Farm it out. Then you would get a percentage of.
Could the EDC do that?
Is that-
I was wondering if the EDC could manage a loan program for us, because that's part of their gig is managing loan programs.
So another question that you had, Ben, was about like the income threshold. So that would mean like, okay, if you are this income to this income, it would be a loan. If you're under this, it would be a grant. Is that what you mean by income threshold?
Yes, the state constitution prevents the gift of public funds, including lending credit, unless you are, unless it is to benefit the poor and infirm in the Constitution's jargon. So that threshold is something that the current program tasks the administrator with, the city administrator, with determining whether somebody is poor or infirm. Generally, it relies on the definition that we have in the sewer billing ordinance already. And so it's not a change to, it's an addition to that process or that program. It's not a new system.
And again, these are meant to be discussion points as opposed to something that Ben's trotting out.
Oh, absolutely. No, I was just curious. I thought that's what you meant. I just wanted to clarify for myself for next time we talk about this, where the direction we were going. So
Looks like the two discussion points that Ben's looking for some direction on is whether someone who has a system that has failed should be eligible.
right.
Because it's an interesting point because they're kind of compelled to do it now.
Well,
So they should get an opportunity to
They're
have.
compelled, but I mean, then what's the way around that? What would they do if they decided, all right, their septic failed and they're not gonna connect to the water? What are they gonna do?
They're compelled to connect as opposed to.
No, the difference is, trying to have someone be proactive in it.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
As opposed to waiting
that's
until it fails.
Right, yes.
Correct.
When
Like,
they're.
but-
So do you just let it sit there and it fails, or do you
So-
pump your system every 3 years and try to get as extended a life as you can out of it? That's the difference. Is that correct? Is that what you're looking for, Ben?
I understand the carrot stick concept of not allowing failure, but
Right.
then weighing on the fact of like, how much money is there in there? You know, depending on what, $10,000 isn't.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that any one of these awards would pay for the entire
Mhm.
transition from septic to sewer.
Ben, would waiving part of the hookup fee be part of this? Or could it be part of this?
Yeah, there's still an SDC in the mix.
As opposed to a loan or a grant?
I don't know how that, I don't know anything about the process of waiving a hookup fee. And ultimately, that's going to lead to higher monthly rates. if you
Right.
hookup fees. So that the waiver of a hookup fee would be outside of this process. And I guess I'd turn to Liana for that. But generally, I think that Ken would come in and say the same thing about the state constitution.
Okay, I just wondering.
I mean, you guys can set rates. I mean, that's part of the things you do, but keeping in mind that SDCs are calculated based upon the overall capital cost of the system. And if you waive it for one, that means you're essentially depleting the system of one of the the elements to increase that system in the future to deal with these new hookups. And so you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by waiving an SDC. It's better to, if you have a loan program that allows you to accept payments in the future, go ahead and make them pay. You can make them pay over time, but to waive it altogether, kind of handicap, it's a zero-sum game. You've got only so much income that those SDCs generate, and the whole point of setting the SDCs in the first place is that the new users pay into the system based upon their impacts to the system. So it's not a good idea. I would say it's a bad idea to just do an out and out waiver.
And I was thinking more in terms of the grant side of this process as opposed to the loan side.
So the process, someone just elects to connect, whether it's through septic failure or they're being proactive in connecting. So chances are good that there is not a connection at the sewer line at this time. So that part is going to have to be addressed, have to find a way to connect. And then since all the sewer in the house goes towards the septic, if the septic is on the other side of the house of the street, then that's one long gravity fed trench back to this newly created stub out. What part of that is the city responsible for already, or is that entire cost borne by the property owner?
Entire cost by the property owner.
Even connecting actually that stuff out on the actual sewer line.
Correct. And
So, yeah, it's
in the
an
street.
expensive endeavor.
Yeah.
All right, so Ben was looking for some direction on these 2 points. Do those with failed systems, should they be considered? And
If they
um,
allow their system to
that's an
fail. I
interesting
think.
kind
Well,
of-
but if
that's an
it
interesting
fails.
wrinkle, though.
Right, if it fails, it's not, it just, yeah, if it fails, I mean, it allowing it or proper maintenance of it or keeping it up, I mean, how, it's hard for who's gonna be the judge of whether or not they did that correctly.
They
I
have
mean, it's
it
just a-
pumped
it's-
every 5 years instead of
Right.
every 3 years.
Or maybe their use was higher than their neighbor and they, whatever, like, it's just,
You know,
did it fail or did it not fail?
Yeah, let's keep it
Are
at
those
that.
people in failure or not failure? Can they be in or
Are
not?
those, should those systems be considered for this
Right.
program? And is the city willing to become a lender? 2 points.
I mean,
Well, if we're not gonna allow them to do it, why do we have the program?
That's my thought.
I mean,
Right.
if we're not gonna allow somebody that has a system that has failed
Right, in.
to be part of this program, then why have the program at all?
Well, I think the
Right.
program was to make people go, okay, well, mine, it could fail in the future. Let's connect now and miss that. So the program's for part of that,
Well,
is that?
I guess I can go towards sustainability, but then you've got somebody that really needs the help that we've just said.
No.
Yeah.
Right, I agree with Dave. If the program should be around people who need to connect to the sewer, and so for me, I think that excluding people who their system has failed doesn't go toward what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So
I agree.
that's the direction for me. But I'm
that's-
only one.
But what do you, and Christie?
I agree with that. I think everyone should be included.
All right, so that's point number 1. And
Loans or grants. I think that Ben needs to manage the loan program, obviously.
I like that answer.
Partly financing by Ben Shoemaker.
Well, that's a tough, it's a
He's
tough
just
one, though.
helping by setting up. the program.
if you told me if I had a septic tank and then all of a sudden it became necessary, I would be in a tough spot to make that happen. That would be a tough
Absolutely.
thing for me. So any way to make that better or easier attainable
Mhm.
is good. Problem is though, is the friction point is, are we in a position to run a loan program?
Well,
So I guess to put it out there, are we at least interested if there's a possibility that the burden of managing the loan program isn't here? And is that even a possibility? Have you heard of such a thing, Ken? Are we blowing, have you heard of anything like this?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, Washougal has a program like that one.
And do they manage it though?
They manage it, but you realize they have, a $49 million annual budget and, a staff of many, I couldn't even tell you how many people. So they have the people to be able to run a program like that. Now, they're going to have a lot more demand in their system for these sorts of loans as well. So, I think it's doable, and a lot of it's upfront issues like generating the forms, making sure that we're clear about recording liens, the things that we need to do under the statute to not create an unconstitutional gift of funds. A lot of that is going to be upfront, and it's going to be pretty time consuming on an upfront basis. And then periodically, as people submit their applications, it'll take a little chunk of administrative time. But, I think it's doable even for a smaller city like ours.
so for me, the idea with the grant, it's gonna go, it'd be tricky to keep that funded for long term, unless we can come up with another stream.
Unless you sprinkle in the, what do we call it? The hardship, your
Or an affirm.
Yeah, if there's somebody that qualifies for the grant,
Right.
then that's that, but maybe the
Everybody else.
impetus should be on an actual loan program that is sustainable.
That's,
Well, and my question on this whole thing is, what is the revenue stream that's feeding it?
Well, so far it's that seed money from a mitigation.
So
but he's
yeah.
gonna bring the actual
It
figures.
would
of
just
what
be,
how
it would just be
Right
mitigation.
now, it's the mitigation, the funds that we've had set aside for it, that, what, 10,000?
Yeah, and so
$10,000
we
set
would,
aside.
you know, so for example, if we do another project that requires mitigation, we could put money into here instead of,
Right, a different.
yeah,
bucket.
right.
No. I've heard of this where you like, what is it? Clean air, you mitigation for pollution, you can put money
Oh, yeah,
into a
carbon
fund
credits.
halfway across, yeah,
Yeah.
carbon credits, so. Is that even a thing? If
This
another
is-
municipality,
That would
if
be-
another municipality says we need mitigation
We
opportunity.
could put it out there that we're
I
taking
think so,
that.
so the way that this came about though was, so we needed to do mitigation for Rock Creek, which was like the Columbia River, and they provided us with some organization, was it south of Bonneville? South of the dam even?
I think it was the estuary, so that'd be saltwater influence area.
Right? So they're like, hey, so you need to do mitigation. So how about you pay this organization the $10,000? I'm like, why would we pay someone that far away
Right.
for mitigation? What about locally? I mean, we were even thinking Underwood Conservation District, you know, something like that. And so anything that improves water quality more locally is what this program could then be used for.
Right.
In essence. So anyone that wants to do a project and needs
Offset
to
that.
offset that,
We are an option, good.
we could be an option.
Minimum fee.
Mhm.
It's like, yep, the loan program feels a little more sustainable than the grant, but who knows, grant money could come in unexpectedly.
Right.
I mean, can we do both? If there's already that cap of pouring and firmed, can you have grant
Grants.
below a certain point and then loan above?
One of the things that we're looking at doing as well, with the rate restructuring is having different tiers rather than just you either have it or you don't line, having, you know, like a 20% or a 30%, 50, you know, tiering that rate discount. And so that might apply, like you can get a portion of a grant and then a portion of the loan. It makes it more complex.
Yeah.
But,
More administration, but it can
yeah,
benefit possibly more.
right.
Does that give you any kind of direction, Ben, on what you were asking for?
Number one, certainly, and then I think with number two, it's endeavor to make the loan program work and then reconsider if it doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, if Ben, if we found a source from, you know, if there was a bill, if there was a source, some legislation passed that gave funds to fund it longer term, I would absolutely be open to that being a grant program. But I just don't want to see this happen for two people and then we're done.
Yeah, no revenue coming in.
Right?
Yeah.
And so in my mind, it makes more sense for us to set something up that can continue to help people. And then we can offset it with other funds that come in, but that's kind of my 2 cents.
Good.
Well, we're going to get a sense of the scope of the need, right, on soon.
Right. Yeah, even the people that it would even possibly impact, right? For right now.
Let's look forward to the numbers and
Absolutely.
then see if there's another entity that can manage the program.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
All right.
Good.
Awesome.
All right. You have some informational items in your packet. All right, staff report, Ben.
Well, Liana already gave most of it with the strategic plan update. So I will provide some color on some of those things so that broadband, well, starting with the current priorities, we're moving forward with the shoreline access planning. We are moving forward with the annexation policy. Some more details on that. At their meeting on just Monday, Planning Commission asked to engage the County Planning Commission on this general topic to open their eyes, our Planning Commission's eyes, about what Skamania County is working on, what they're thinking, what their Planning Commission wants to see, and vice versa. So we've got a draft letter to go out to them. The Planning Commission created a subcommittee of their membership to really dig into the nuts and bolts of this, and appointed Charlie Hales as the chair of that committee, assisted by Jeff Breckel. And that's as far as they've gotten. We haven't met to see next steps for the subcommittee, but I'm sure that they would love to have one or two of you join them on that too. Then we will await the response from the County Planning Commission about whether they would like to have a joint meeting. Talking with the acting community development director there, it sounds like he thinks that that's a good idea. If it were up to him, it would happen, but it's not up to him, and he understands that too. So we will await that. The parking, Liana covered really well. I'll give the general spiel that I have. So our approach to parking has been three-pronged. So far, we have reduced the overall amount of parking required in our downtown area. We'll consider further reductions as necessary. There's nothing immediately planned for that, but we're also looking at the parking on-site requirements and providing that in lieu fee to buy out of your on-site requirement and put it into a city fund for parking improvements to the downtown core. We've identified a number of potential improvements and had engineering estimates prepared on that overall cost. So next step will be to bring to you those list of improvements and which ones you want to prioritize that will determine what the cost per space is and what somebody could be expected to pay if they wanted to pay that fee in lieu. That was all prong number two. Prong number three is looking at our on-street parking prohibitions. Currently, you aren't allowed to park overnight on several streets downtown. And if we're not going to be requiring places for people to park their vehicle on site, then they need somewhere to park. Oftentimes that's going to be on the street. So we've got a draft update to those regulations that we are running through internally, and we'll be doing some strategic outreach on that to potentially affected interests before we bring anything to you. But that parking one is also going along. That's the third of my priorities. As we're working on these, we are setting up the next steps. So broadband was the one that's, hey, this might be actually a little bit easier than we thought it was going to be with the state's assistance. So we're partnering with Skamania County to develop up to 6 potential broadband projects that would close speed gaps in our communities. And so those projects will be able to immediately proceed to the next step of funding and finding internet service providers as partners who would roll out the broadband with that funding. So that is all a wonderful service that's being provided by the state broadband office. And it fills a huge gap that we have when we really looked at this in 2018, where they were relying on us to say, well, what's your broadband need? And we're like, well, we know broadband is speed and we have no idea how to get speed. Why are you asking us what our need is? So they heard that across the state and they're saying, okay, we'll help you understand how to fill that need. So that's good. Also working with the school district, approach them about school walking routes. That was something that you asked for in the comprehensive plan update that we did earlier this year, a school walking route plan. And so reached out to them for sort of just advanced coordination to say, hey, this is something we're considering. Would that benefit you? How might we be able to work together? And Ingrid, the superintendent, produced their school walking route map. And so that was a huge step forward into our plan, is we don't have to figure out where to plan for. We just need to figure out what to do with the areas on their map. So once we move through these projects, we'll start picking up those other ones more fully, and continue to keep those rows in the strategic plan green, or was blue finished? Move a whole
Blue's
bunch.
finished.
yeah.
Move a whole
Blue's done.
bunch to blue.
Green is on track.
Yep. At the same time, we've been doing a lot of pre-application work, small projects and large waterfront projects, including potentially reconsidering the project on Rock Creek Cove. So it's busy. It's sure busy, and we'll be happy when Carolyn rejoins us to retake some of that load. And thank you very much for approving the additional staff member. That's going to take a huge load off of us and allow us to move forward. Don't know, you know, a lot of the inner workings when an application comes in, something like somebody wants to turn their home into a salon. I'm gathering all the addresses for properties within 300 feet of that. I'm making those labels and sticking the labels and folding the mailer that goes out, and having an assistant to be able to do those sorts of tasks is going to free up my time to do the analysis there and to keep other projects moving forward too. So thank you very much for that. It's been a long time coming, and it'll be a relief too to get that person up to speed and part of the team. So end of report.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
I say it all the time, but we have been understaffed and overperforming for a while. So the fact that we have found a way to fund an additional person in the office is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Done.
Yeah, so Anders is actually going to be preparing that to go to the newspaper tomorrow. So it'll be in the paper on Wednesday, and we'll get that rolling.
Now that we have a job description.
Yep, now that we have a job description. So yes, again, thank you for that.
Kind of a big deal.
Right, kind of a
Just
big
saying,
deal.
Kind of a big deal.
Yep. For the Columbia realignment project, we're reviewing the draft report from the soil testing. And once that report's reviewed, we'll set up a meeting with the property owners and the consultant, so that if they have questions, they can ask the consultant directly and not have the city be a middleman. And that was included in the budget and everything. And so that project is moving forward, not only for, so now that they have the report, once we just again discuss that, they'll send it off to ecology. Ecology will review it and move forward from there with the plan and the feasibility of cost to mitigate any of the concerns that were identified in that report, as well as overall analysis of whether or not a redevelopment would be feasible. Thank you.
How was the response for when we had had a meeting about that, right? Like a public kind of.
Not a lot of people showed up to the public meeting. Yeah.
I couldn't go. I couldn't make it, but I didn't hear much about it. That'd be why.
That might be why.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you think there'd be some
So-
interested parties? So, okay,
Mhm.
that was all.
So, yep. But again, that's not the last time they can have input on it.
Sure.
Again, we received the TIB funding for the project, for the street projects. And I'm gonna show, not that one. Shoot. One second. Here we go. Okay. Let me share my screen again. Photos
Yay.
of the wastewater treatment plant construction. So this is the concrete pad being poured for the generator. And then is it actually being poured? So that one was done. As you can see, it's a smaller area, and they were able to tarp it, so it didn't have much impact for the weather. And sorry, I didn't line these up. This is what is going to be poured soon. This is down in the ditch, the aeration basin. So they're doing all the forms. I believe they're done with the rebar. If not, they ran out of materials, and so they're waiting on more materials to finish the rebar. But the other day when I was there for a meeting, they were kind of working where this gentleman was standing. So most of it was pretty much complete. I'll see if there's a picture to kind of show you the depth of it. It's a sideways picture of the depth. But these are just pictures from our inspectors and engineers. So this is one of the change orders that we had. You know, there's this pipe that wasn't identified, and it's encased in concrete.
Oh my God.
So
Okay.
they had to, so there's a bunch of these iron beams that are holding it up with chains and everything. So again, they've backfilled this with some CDF, which was challenging again because of the slope. So we're working on making sure that the as-builds are accurate now, but also making sure that when they fill that with CDF, it's not the kind that cannot be moved like concrete.
Did they identify the pipe?
Well, they identified it now.
I mean, they identified that it's a pipe, but.
Right, right. And I think it's conduit.
Okay.
But yeah. Yes.
Interesting choice.
So, we're trying.
Always cut into it and find out.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things you find when you start digging it up. So again,
Yeah, my dad.
originally 70s and then expanded in the 90s and then now.
And then we're doing this.
Right. So again, you know, for scale,
There,
that's
yeah.
Yeah.
A long ways down there.
yes, quite a ways down there.
They've moved a lot of material.
Yeah,
No kidding.
yes.
Where'd all that dirt
So, yeah.
You put all the.
So anyway, those are just some photos
Very
that I
cool.
wanted to share.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, all monies.
Very
One thing I realized though, in talking today with someone about the project, we were talking about sales tax. I'm like, oh, hey, 1.2% of the project costs coming back to the city
From our own.
from our own sales tax.
Nice.
So,
Nice. I like
up
it.
to $20 million.
But that doesn't sound like a
Two.
big deal, but it's still a
Right.
big, that, yeah.
Yeah,
That's kind of like scratching your own back, isn't it?
right, right. See, silver lining.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So anyway, help fund those TIB projects.
There you go.
So have you guys
Yeah.
ever heard the term thimble rigger? It's an old way of the shell game.
Oh.
Hmm.
Okay.
So thimble rig.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a lot of project management.
2% of 13 million. Is that what we're talking about?
$130,000.
Damn.
We're on
Ish.
way
I mean,
back.
that's like 1%, but yeah, yeah. And yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else that I haven't already covered. So
You covered a lot today.
I know.
Well,
just
thanks for everything that
grants out.
all the
Yeah.
staff is doing, because I know you guys are up to your hind end in alligators. So.
For as brisk as this meeting has been, we've covered a lot of ground. today.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, yes.
And yes, I'm sure that the staff would love to hear your compliments.
There you go. There you go.
That it?
Yeah, that's all I can, yes.
All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the vouchers.
I'd move to approve the vouchers as presented.
Second.
And do we have signatures on everything we
Yes,
need
sir.
on that as far as the vouchers go?
Yeah, she
All right.
should send that.
First and second, any further discussion? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All right, so as far as mayor and council reports, I think you saw my beaming face earlier. That's all I have to report is that we are on our way to the next phase of a very cool project. Oh, and how about those lights?
Oh, you
How
know,
about those lights?
so the lights downtown, I'd like to say that, from everybody I've talked to, they are like, this year they went above and beyond. They did awesome. on
Would you
the
like to
lights.
elaborate on how we got to lighting light posts?
There were
was three
of us
on a lighting committee.
wandering around downtown, measuring trees, trying to figure out how many feet of lights we need to put on each of the trees. And that's a small tree, that's a medium tree. Oh, that's a big one. And it's like, oh, but only that one has power and that one has power, but that one doesn't have power. And then at some point, one of us looked up. It's like, hey, all these lampposts are all basically
all got
the
power.
same.
Same size-
They all
same size
have
they like
power,
doing.
and they're the same size.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that?
Well, no, I'm just saying that, so my son is like, Christmas is his jam all year, right? He sings Christmas songs all the way to the
Sounds like
summer
my
and then
wife.
starts again in like August. So, we drive him around. Look, downtown this year just blew him away. So I appreciate whoever's epiphany that was and the work they put in. And the port, actually, the trees down there,
Stepping it up, Tom?
they did a really good job down there as well. I just wanted to, like, the whole downtown Stevenson area, I think was great
Boy,
this year.
Windermere really.
Well, we got
went
Penny
over.
working there.
Oh, you know.
Penny's a pretty. So the other
But I
part
mean,
about the lights is that
businesses too, I mean, they did really good.
some of the fixtures were stolen. So for example, the Christmas in the Gorge sign is
I
brand new.
saw that the
The
shop did that.
snowflakes are brand new, the trees are brand new, so the high school welded together.
Yeah, the
the
metal shop
bones.
guys did that, yeah.
And then the lighting committee and anybody that would show up to do it, there was spools of wire,
Mhm.
buckets of lights and wired by hand, every single one of them.
Well, it was awesome. It looks awesome. And I saw that they had to remake those and I talked to my brother about that actually. On Tuesday when we went out to the musical out in Carson, the presentation, when we were driving back through, we saw the lights. That was like our first time to drive through there. And it was great.
Just watching, the way they march up and down the hills. So this is the Downtown Association, hard at work, always looking for volunteers, even if it's just a seasonal thing, like shimmying up a ladder and helping put up and take down lights.
How many mile-an-hour winds?
You'd be surprised the wind signature on a ladder. You think it's just a big open, no, just enough. So yes, everybody that was up on the ladder had their back to the wind. It was quite the adventure.
Well, it was great. It's great. I appreciate it. And my whole family, I mean, cousins and like everybody who drove around. That's just kind of the one of the things you do when you live here, right? You drive and see the houses and all that stuff. And it was great. Downtown looked fantastic this year. Not that it ever looks bad, but I mean, it was different and it was really good. So
Can't wait
Thank
for
you.
Columbia to have those same light posts on it.
there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
Anybody else?
that's all I have.
Any other reports from you guys? Christie? Anything for the greater good?
You guys all talked about the meeting that I went to over there, so we could sign that. That we could approve the plaza. So
All right, anything that you would like to see on the agenda for next month?
Ben's proposal is the loan officer, adding that to his to his job description. No, oh no, that might not be on there.
8:20. Thanks very much for coming. Love you, Ben. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. I'll be sending,
Merry
I'll be sending,
Christmas.
Merry
Bye,
Christmas,
Ken.
Ken.
Bye,
I'll be
Christy.
sending you all the documents to sign electronically.
Bye.
I didn't get
I know
that.
you will. I
Yeah.
can hardly
Yeah.
wait.
You're right.